Hey, what is up, mortals? It is Dylan here with a new video for you. Welcome to part 1 of What If Dabi and Shoto Switched Places. I just wanted to greet you guys by just saying, sit back and relax, you're in for a treat. So, we begin. Fundamentally, the timeline for events in My Hero Academia wouldn't change much, or it would change drastically depending entirely on Endeavor and his goals in creating his successor and prodigal son. Based on what we understand concerning Endeavor and his desire to create a child with 2 quirks that could one day become the #1 hero, capable of surpassing All Might, it's reasonable to assume that if Dabi was born with that set of quirks, it can almost be assumed that Shoto wouldn't have been born. He is the youngest of his family, since Endeavor was concerned only with creating an offspring capable of bearing 2 quirks, rather than for any loving reasons. We would need to slightly rewrite Endeavor's character for this theory, to have a ground to stand on. We also don't want to swap Dabi and Shoto completely, since it can easily be argued that a great portion of both characters are who they are through their set of lived life experiences, rather than being good or evil by their nature. Nurture leads to many of the issues they experience in our modern timeline. The goal of this story is to, again, change as little as possible, keeping each character's quirks the same and Endeavor's choices the same, but adjust one tiny portion that allows Shoto to walk a darker path in life, while Dabi gets to see the light. Shortly after the night where Shoto obtained his iconic scar, his father informed him of his mother being admitted to a hospital for what had happened to him. Shoto didn't take to the news well and fled from home, no longer wanting to tolerate the abuses of his father and not wanting to be subjected to a destiny that wasn't his own. His desires to be a hero were so tightly wrapped up in his mother that her sudden disappearance from his life, combined with the new facial scarring, left him feeling distraught enough to flee from his home. I didn't want this. It's his fault, not mine. But Mom, she's still. Todoroki tripped over a rock as he fled down an empty street, fleeing into the night intending to visit his mother in the hospital, not trusting his father to deliver him. However, a certain villain was prowling the streets, and upon seeing a young child running through the streets, he moved onto the scene, still recovering from his prior encounter with All Might. Hello, little boy. Are you lost? Meanwhile, Endeavor was flaring up, attempting to find his masterpiece, searching all throughout his home, attempting to locate Shoto. At first, he was simply displaying annoyance, like he had lost his car keys. Natsuo! Fuyumi! Have either of you seen Shoto? Neither of them had, leading to panic from their father figure. Perhaps he somehow managed to escape and was attempting to visit his mother in the hospital? Entirely possible. He made a phone call. Ray, it's Todoroki with you. No. Should he be? Swiftly, the call ended as Enji slammed the home phone back onto its body. His calm demeanor fell away as he made another call, this time to the local authorities. Shoto was reported missing to the authorities, and the Todoroki family waited patiently for any sort of word from the authorities. However, Endeavor was unwilling to leave the life of his masterpiece in the hands of the mere police workers. He spoke with many of his heroic compatriots, giving them enough information to go off of. They would begin similar searches around the city, then the country, and finally, accessing contacts the world over, making the search as global as his sphere of influence would allow, all the while maintaining the secret of why he actually left. Days went by. Days turned into weeks. Weeks to months. Shoto never returned, leaving Enji downtrodden. Having lost his dream of surpassing All Might through his own flesh and blood, he'd meet with his wife once more, allowing her back into his home, once he was all but certain that Shoto wouldn't be returning anytime soon. The wind howled that night. The sound of trees thrashing against the wind were heard throughout the Todoroki household as Enji and Rei sat on opposite ends of the table. The two hadn't spoken to each other in quite some time. One-off conversations here and there concerning their son over the phone, but not much else. Now they sat, face to face with the devastating reality of their son being missing and unlikely to return. And they had nothing to say to one another. The silence was eventually broken by a simple question asked. Did you influence his choice to leave? Perhaps he was offended. Taking such an emotional barrage the months that she was forced to remain separated from her family during such a rough time left her feeling devastated, and the first words being spoken to her in person were accusatory questions. No, I didn't have any influence over this situation, Enji. This is all your fault! She cried out, loud enough for her voice to travel through the halls of the house. Just around the corner, Toya Todoroki, or Dabi as he is more commonly known, was listening closely to her parents' conversation. The family crisis was enough for him to avoid causing that massive wildfire that resulted in his supposed death in the original timeline. As cruel of a thought as it was, with Shoto out of the way, there was some hope that he could achieve his destiny. To live up to his father's legacy. Maybe it's my time, he'd whisper to himself as the conversation got more heated in the living room. Rather than continuing to listen in, he fled back to his room. Hearing the sound of his father stand up and stomp through the living room was enough to make him flee, believing he'd been discovered. Ad time. This video is sponsored by NordVPN. Staying safe online is an ever-growing difficulty, and hackers could exploit you. NordVPN allows you to change your IP address, making you harder to track, securing your privacy. In addition to providing you with safe passage through the web, you can also expand the reach of your favorite streaming services. Are you tired of going through 2, 3, or even 4 streaming services to watch your favorite anime? Well, with NordVPN, you can change your country and be able to binge shows like My Hero Academia, Naruto, and many others on your favorite streaming service with just a press of a button. Check out the link in the description to get 72% off when buying for 2 years, $3.29 a month. This deal is for a limited time. And thank you to NordVPN for sponsoring this video. The following day, the family was in a sad state of affairs. The disappearance of their youngest sibling put the hero world in a state of shock. All except young Toya. He approached his mother while she ironed out her husband's dress shirts and asked, "Mom, are you busy?" He asked, as if he didn't already know the current state of affairs. He moved over to her side, which caused her to look down. He was smiling, which was such a huge change of pace from the aggression of her husband and the silence of her younger children. It was just the expression she needed to see right now. He looks just like Shoto did, watching the TV. She thought momentarily, before lifting the iron off the dress shirt and smiling down at her son. Being allowed back into the house dramatically improved Reisa's mood, as she desperately wanted to be a better parent to all of her children in the wake of Shoto's disappearance, and she believed that there was no better opportunity than this one. No, actually, here, come with me. She stopped and placed the iron down, turning it off and taking him towards the couch. Once we were both sitting, she exhaled through her nose and asked, "Toya, do you still want to be a hero?" "Obviously. You already know, huh? That you've been sneaking out constantly to train in that mountainside." "Of course I know. And you want me to stop?" "I want you to follow your dreams, Toya." Her answer left the boy in a state of shock, eyes wide open as he was expecting to have her relay this information to father and get another conversation about how futile his dreams of becoming a hero truly were. His quirk often caused him to burn himself and left horrible scars along his arms and torso. He ran a hand over his stomach, where he'd more recently acquired a scar, and asked, "So, you won't tell Dad?" "He might already know. But you should be the one to tell him. Once you feel like you've become something he can be proud of, I would tell him that you want to be a hero. Despite everything that has happened, it might give him a reason." "A reason? A reason for what?" "Don't worry about it, sweetie. Just keep it up, and I'll talk to him about potentially letting you go to a hero school when you graduate this year. Okay?" Keeping the situation as isolated as possible, she dedicated to impart the same advice she gave Shoto a few years ago. "Just remember, stay true to yourself. You're not inferior to anyone else in this household. It's okay to use your power, to become who you want to be." That conversation reignited the spark in Toya, causing him to train harder and become a boy Endeavor would be proud to call his son. The following days were quiet around the household, and Shoto was never found. However, one evening, Endeavor discovered Toya wasn't home with his siblings, and he was unaccounted for during the final period of class. He distinctly remembered his conversation he had when Toya was a bit younger, about forbidding him from training and seeking a new path in life, away from the hero world. However, he remained defiant. He knew vaguely of the location his son trained at in secret. Rather than speaking directly to his wife about punishing him for his continued defiance, today he'd address the issue himself. His conversation with his wife gave him some insight as to the state of his family, something he never considered nor cared about prior to losing his masterpiece. It was getting to around winter time, and fresh snow was starting to fall from the sky. Upon arriving at Sekoto Peak, Endeavor could see smoke rising into the sky, clear as day. He'd move into the scene at a faster pace, realizing that wasn't any simple campfire flame. Rather, a good portion of the forest had rapidly burst into a blue-colored flame. As he moved in, searching for his son, he'd make a quick call for the local fire department to help quell the forest fire. Oh, the irony. Rushing to the center of the blaze, he saw a figure completely engulfed in flames, stumbling about trying desperately to maintain control of his quirk. His son, Toya. He stumbled forward and screamed, the sound barely audible to the only person who could have actually heard it. It could also be that his jaw was barely hanging on the hinges of his mouth, hanging from his face. The skin on his cheeks seared away by the flames. "Hold on!" Enji called out to his son as he rushed forward, grasping the ignited Toya, who burned so bright it physically pained Endeavor to stand hold the source of these blue flames. He'd run with him towards a nearby lake and submerged both of them fully into the water, holding them both down underneath the water, causing Toya to flail as the sensation of being drowned overwhelmed his emotions, causing his flames to finally shimmer down as he managed to escape his father's hands. Once he was finally free, he fell into the sands beside the lake and began to cry. Body burned and flooded with an overwhelming feeling of physical pain and the emotional pain of knowing that his father of all people had to be the one to save him, was already eating away at the injured boy's mind. He tried to speak, but his father wasn't going to have this conversation here. Not now. Endeavor threw his son over his shoulder and began to escape the scene. Now that his son's flame was put out, he needed to get him to the approaching medical personnel for proper medical treatment. Once the medics had arrived on the scene, and Toya was placed into the stretcher, being prepped to be moved via helicopter towards the nearest hospital to address his wounds, he felt his father place a hand on his shoulder and stared down at him. Toya went to speak only to be interrupted by his father. "I'm sorry." Toya was taken to a medical center as the fire was taken care of by various heroes and the local fire department. That is part 1, establishing Todoroki and Dabi's new roles in the story and setting the scene for Endeavor to realize his treatment towards his children resulted in Shoto running away. As the family believes in this version of events, conflict is established in how Shoto has disappeared and the reason for Dabi continuing to exist in the story despite the events in the canonical timeline not supporting him being there. Thank you all for indulging yourself in all this information thus far. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, there are a few more things that I'd like to go over before the video ends. Firstly, if you're in the mood for some great storytelling, We the Celestials has got you covered. Our We the Celestials, My Hero Academia, and Naruto What If channels retell the story of their namesake anime with a twist. Check it out if you're interested. Secondly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details can be found in the description below. Lastly, if you're interested in what we do here at We the Celestials, then I'd like to extend you an invitation to join the team. The only caveat being that we only accept members from 16 years and up to join our crew. You can sign up for whichever category fulfills your interests by joining the recruitment Discord using the link in the description below. We're always looking for members to join us. Well, that's it from us for today's video. So thank you all for watching.